Meetings are now resumed. You may be seated.
Raising of matters of privileges.
None.
Government business, bills. First readings. Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023.
The bill has been deemed to have been read for a first time and is set down for a second reading.
Plant Protection Bill 2023.
The bill has been deemed to have been read for a first time and is set down for a second reading.
Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023.
The bill has been deemed to have been read a first time and is set down for a second reading.
Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill 2023.
The bill has been deemed to have been read for a first time and is set down for a second reading.
Second readings. Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023.
Members, we will just take a 5-minute suspension. I'll just ask you all to stay in your seats. Proceedings are now resumed. You may be seated.
Second readings. Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the mover wish to speak thereto?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to present a bill on behalf of the government. This said bill seeks to clarify and indeed improve the composition of the members of the Public Lands Commission. Madam Speaker, the bill is needed to rectify the composition of the said commission, the voting rights of members, the term limits of members, and the validation of members due to the ill intention of the existing Public Lands Act. That is, the Act limits the terms of the members to 2 years, and in the small pool of available persons, it makes it difficult to find competent persons, with only having one possible extension to the initial 2-year term. Madam Speaker, on the issue of the composition of membership, the current public members of the Commission represents the 6 historic districts. However, from these 6 members, 1 is elected as chairperson, and as such, that district is then deprived of a vote, other than having a casting vote on the matters arising before the PLC meetings. The amendment bill, Madam Speaker, would seek to change this and indeed provides each historical district with a member plus an additional member as the chairperson, all of whom must be Caymanian. Madam Speaker, the amendment bill also importantly adds the chief officer or designate for the minister responsible for planning. Planning matters and the matters dealt with by the PLC are usually linked, and as such, it is important, Madam Speaker, that such an addition is being made to the PLC. The amendment bill also clarifies the civil servant's role on the Commission as being that of ex officio, that is, non-voted members of the Commission. They are to provide their guidance, advice, and expertise to matters, but the members of the public are those who will now vote and decide on matters. This is a well-needed change. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the current principal Act sets term limits for members of the Commission to a 2-year term plus 1 additional 2-year term. The intention of the Principal Act is therefore to remove this limitation. This provides for continuity of the Commission as well as retention of historical knowledge. Madam Speaker, last and perhaps most importantly, Clause 4 sets out a validation of existing members that may have surpassed their term limits based on the existing Act. These persons have deep-rooted love for the country and we believe seek to protect the interests of our Caymanians by serving on this important commission. As noted earlier, Madam Speaker, the inadvertent issue in the Principal Act has caused the person to only be able to serve a maximum of 4 years according to the legal advice that we are the beneficiaries thereof. That is 2 2-year terms. The government, Madam Speaker, recognizes that the need to retain members of our community on important boards such as the PLC. We have taken this step then to validate their continued work and hope to retain such on a commission going forward. The clauses, Madam Speaker, of the bill is arranged in 4 clauses. Clause 1 of the bill makes provision for the short title. Clause 2 provides for the amendment of the Principal Act by repealing and substituting Section 6 in order to provide the chairperson not only to be a Caymanian appointed by Cabinet, apart from the Caymanian members appointed under Section 1B, but also the clause provides for Cabinet to appoint the deputy chairperson from among the 6 Caymanian members of the Commission from each of the 6 traditional districts, as is set out in subsection 1B. Clause 2, Madam Speaker, removes the term limits for the Commission by providing that members after the expiry of their initial 2-year term may be reappointed for additional 2-year terms without a set limit on the number of times that they may be reappointed. Clause 2, Madam Speaker, provides that the civil servants of the Commission, as is set out in subsection 1C to G, are ex-officio members and as such are not entitled to vote. Clause 3 provides for deletions and substitutions of specific words to ensure consistency throughout the entire piece of legislation that's drafted. Clause 4 validates the appointments of members of the Commission who were reappointed for a term beyond the maximum permitted under Section 6 of the Principal Act. The clause provides that their appointments shall be treated as if they were made under the Amending and Validating Act. The clause further provides, Madam Speaker, that the acts or omissions of the Commission members shall not be regarded as invalid by reason only of their appointments being for a period beyond the term permitted under the Principal Act. That is, Madam Speaker, the following the expiry of the appointments on December 1st, 2021, up to the date of this Amending and Validating Act comes into force. Madam Speaker, Clause 4 further provides that the Commission shall not be regarded as improperly constituted from 1st December 2021 up to the commencement of the Act because of the reappointment of the Commission members beyond the date of expiry for their second 2-year term. Madam Speaker, since the publication of the Amendment Bill, changes have been further identified, and we have therefore sought to make committee stage amendments during the committee stage, of which I shall speak further to at the appropriate time. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, this concludes the presentation of the proposed amendment, and I look forward to making those said amendments at committee stage, which we've filed one in July, and we sought leave today for the waiver of 2 days' notice on the second amendment. I wish to thank the Public Lands Commission, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Attorney General Chambers, the Legislative Drafting Department, and my ministerial staff for their valiant efforts in respect of the preparation of this bill. I therefore commend the Public Lands Amendment and the Validation Bill 2023 to this Honourable House. May it please you.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to be able to make some comments on the Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the opposition, I indicate quite clearly that we support the bill and the amendments that it is making to the Public Lands Bill itself. Madam Speaker, we understand the changes that are being made, and I understand too, Madam Speaker, particularly with, I think it is Section 6 of Section 2 of the bill, subsection 6, I think it is. No, let me get the right section, Madam Speaker. Subsection 4, where it speaks for the membership of the committees, where they are elected for 2-year periods, but will now be eligible for election to and reappointment to further 2-year terms. And that, Madam Speaker, is a change, because I believe that they were limited, as you so said in your contribution in presenting the bill, that they were limited to just one further 2-year term. Madam Speaker, I do know that there are a number of acts and boards and committees that do have similar sorts of restrictions in terms of the limits that a person may serve on on boards. I just wondered if this is a policy direction of the government with regard to maybe amending other legislations to conform with language similarly here. So if the minister is able to indicate whether that is the case, then I'd be grateful for it. But other than that, Madam Speaker, we have no further observations on the bill and are happy to support it at the appropriate time in voting for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? The elected member for Bordentown East.
West side.
Bordentown West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a few observations on this bill. I couldn't help but notice, first of all, Madam Speaker, that when this public lands bill was first passed by Parliament, it was back in March 2017, thereabouts, the same time as the Public Authorities Law. So I was wondering if they was basically looking for some similarity in the spirits of both laws, seeing that they basically arrived at Parliament pretty much the same time. One of the things that jumped out, Madam Speaker, in terms of actually looking at the bill is the actual membership. Because one of the things in the first bill is that the civil servants that were on the committee were not recognized or deemed at the time as ex officio members, whereas in this amendment, it has made them perfectly clear that they are ex officio members. With that said, Madam Speaker, it would indicate that the original membership of the Public Lands Commission went from 10 members, as it was originally. I think they were from the different districts. 6 representatives, where both the chair and the deputy chair came from being one of the 6, and then the 4 civil servants. Under this amendment, Madam Speaker, it is actually moving to 12 members. So one of the things I was a bit curious about, Madam Speaker, is the quorum, because the quorum has remained at 5 members, which originally would have been half of the 10 members that were there. But now with 7 voting members and the rest being ex officio members, is it the intention that the quorum remains at 5? The other observation that I noticed, Madam Speaker, was around the appointment of the Chief Inspector. In that, Madam Speaker, recognizing that this is a commission and seeing where in most situations, again, looking back at the spirit of what the Public Authorities Act may have wanted to be, in that should the commission play a more active role in the appointment of the inspector to some extent, where either the chairperson of the committee, as you would have with a board of directors, appointing a CEO to some extent. So maybe the minister can deal with that on clarification. And then also the appointment of the deputy inspectors, Madam Speaker. That was another issue where I noticed that those are actually appointed by the chief inspector per se, and then if they are an employee from a statutory authority, they would need the CEO approval, or if it's an employee from another government entity, it would actually need the chief officer approval. Is it then that these positions were meant to be part-time, or rather not full-time, since in essence you can, in essence, co-op someone from another ministry? And then the other issue, or the 2 other issues that I had, or 3 other issues, rather, Madam Speaker, that jumped out, is one, the vendor's permit process, whereas we noticed that there could have been cases where those permits were refused in terms of renewal or even being granted. The question is there some kind of appeals process that can basically be put in the law, that if someone feels that their permit is actually turned down, that they have some recourse outside of judicial review or something, because recognizing that in some cases these may be small businesses to some extent. So it was just the appeals process, Madam Speaker, if someone's permit was not renewed or they wasn't having any luck. And then the last 2 issues, Madam Speaker, that jumped out is one, these inspectors basically having police powers. I recognize that, and they're basically giving them the same powers as the constable. The question is this, Madam Speaker, seeing that the only competent authority that deals with the management of police officers, constable, is actually the Royal Cayman, well, the Commission of Police. In that situation, would it be prudent to have someone of the Commissioner of Police or a rank above of a gazetted officer or something also included on the committee as ex officio members, as ex officio member, because the last thing you want, Madam Speaker, is someone running around with police powers, and in a nutshell, no one is basically there training them to make sure, or at least we have some comfort that people who are being trained in this field to carry out the powers of a police constable have some level of training or supervision. And then the last thing that jumped out, Madam Speaker, was the very last part of the law where they spoke about the duty of care, where in essence there wasn't, basically the commission had no duty of care to do X, Y, Z. But one of the things I'm curious about, and remembering the issue where we had some young people who wanted to use a public beach, was it for jet ski, Honorable Minister, and they were basically was having some challenges with regards to insurance and everything else, what it is that we can put inside here to mitigate against those kind of events and so forth. So those are just my observation on what was being presented, but in a nutshell, I am in general support of what is presented here today. But thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover of the bill wish to exercise her right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First and foremost, let me just thank all honourable members for their expressed and their tacit support for the bill. There were a number of issues that were raised, first one being from the honourable leader of the opposition as it related to boards having similar limitation and whether this is the way forward for the policy. At this current juncture, Madam Speaker, I cannot say that this is the way forward for the policy, but what I can say as it relates to this particular boards, and the member would know well that some boards are easier to fill, like the Cayman areas boards and the immigration boards are much more luxurious boards in the minds of persons. But this particular board is a most difficult board to fill. Not only does it take Caymanians who are passionate, that has the time available to do it, but those that have the historical knowledge and that are cognizant and are able to wrap their minds around not only the legality, but the practicality and the social aspect of the law that they wish to implement. If I had the full say into it, I would not be advocating for boards to have limitations, because the pool of Caymanians that are available and are competent to actually sit on the numerous boards that government have to fill seem to be less and less, because a lot of people run away from the declarations of interest, not necessarily because there's a cloak of secrecy, but it's a small island and we don't let everybody to know our business, just purely that's the fact. So those who are competent and would have the time, some of the retirees are not into that drama of letting the whole world and Sandra know everything that you have and what you don't have and what you should have and what you ought not to have. As it relates to the membership of civil servants, the member from the Bordentown West, I believe, Bordentown West, concurred with the proposal of keeping in concurrent with the PAA, where civil servants who sit on there to give their guidance and their advice do so in that technical capacity and not as full voting members, but merely as ex-officio members. As it related to the quorum, it was decided that it would remain at 5. As we ourselves have full experience how difficult it is to get quorums in standing committees and select committees. In order for this important commission to operate, we thought it was prudent to keep it at 5. Obviously, it can be under active consideration that if all members are so excited in turning up, we could up it by 1, but for the time being, in the interest of the applications that have been there that need to be fully considered and decisions rendered, 5 was thought to be what is practical and reasonable within the circumstances. And should the PLC have a more active role with appointment of the inspector, I don't think that is something that on the spur of the moment I could comment on without conferencing with the protectors and architects of the Section 55 of the Constitution, which falls squarely under the delegated powers of the Honourable Deputy Governor. But I can say, as it relates to having the members of the commission or the inspectors being trained, the lead inspector is an ex-police woman who comes, I am reliably informed, with full knowledge of executions of warrants, serving therein and all of the aspects that go with it. And I can certainly undertake to the honourable member that if training has not been in vogue, that training commences, because it's a valid point. What I can say is not void of any training, but there is an experienced person that's there, I'm reliably informed, as that too does not fall under my recruiting powers. I have 0 recruiting powers. I would like, Madam Speaker, to thank you for your indulgence for allowing me to close and explain this, and certainly to thank my acting chief officer in particular in the ministry, the Attorney General's chambers, who have at the very last minute, as we see how to tweak it to try to get it working better from a holistic perspective, which would be beneficial to all and sundry. Up until today, we sought to make those amendments. I look forward to navigate those amendments when we get to committee stage. I thank you.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Public Lands Amendment and Validation Bill 2023 has been given a second reading.
Plant Protection Bill 2023.
The Honourable Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Plant Protection Bill 2023.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the mover wish to speak thereto?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to present this bill on behalf of the government. It is a bill that repeals and replaces the Plant and Importation of Exportation Act 1997 revision to provide a comprehensive regime to prevention of introduction of spread of plants, pests, protecting of plants and resources, and facilitating the trade in plants, plant products, and other regulated articles. The bill does this by establishing a system of creating powers that can be exercised in the event of a pest outbreak and other phytosanitary emergencies. Madam Speaker, the Plant Protection Bill 2023 will be a very important piece of legislation as it aims to improve the protection of cultivated and native plants in the Cayman Islands. This will be done through a strengthening of national safeguarding against the entry, establishment of spread of plant pests, while facilitating a safe and effective trade of plants and plant products. Madam Speaker, the bill also seeks to ensure that we are harmonizing with international standards for the safe and regulated trade of plants and plant products, as established by the International Plant Protection Convention. If I may, Madam Speaker, I would like to provide a brief overview of the bill to the Honourable House and the members of the general public. Madam Speaker, the bill has 7 sections. Part 1 deals with preliminary matters, including the difference in the key terms and consistence with the international standards as set out to the International Plant Protection Convention and the international standards for phytosanitary measures. Part 2 addresses the administration of the legislation. This is to establish the Department of Agriculture as a national plant protection organization as required under the Article 4 of the International Plant Protection Convention. Among the other provisions of the section is that the establishment of the administrative structure of the NPPO, and the principles of the governance of the operations of the National Plant Protection Organization and the international movement of plants and plant products. Madam Speaker, Part 3 sets out to the provisions for imports. Among these provisions and guidelines to provide for the control of the importation of plants and plant products and regulate the articles, regulated articles, and Madam Speaker, it is essential any object or material that is capable of harboring or spreading of pests, for the example of mulch, potting soil, or wood packaging material. Part 4 creates a provision of harmonizing the national legislation with the international standards for the export, re-export, and transit of plants and plant products and regulated articles. An important area under the bill will be the regulations to export and to prescribe plants products. Madam Speaker, this will reduce the red tape for the agriculture exports while retaining with the ability to control the export of specific items such as native and endemic plants. Madam Speaker, Part 5, this section provides the mechanism and the authorizations for the control, eradication, and management of the introduced pests through various declarations, including the declaration of quarantine, pest-free areas, quarantine areas, and phytosanitary emergencies, along with other sections of the bill. This will enable the authorized to control the movement of pests, plants, and articles through, in, and out of the area where pests have been detected, and to take the actions necessary to eradication and control. Part 6 enforcement will be critical to the legislation, Madam Speaker. Part 6 of the bill provides the mechanisms for the enforcement of the legislation and includes the powers and the procedures for an inspector performing his or her duties, including the powers of searching and inspecting premises, vehicles, consignments for pests and plants and regulated. One of the noticeable changes being proposed by the bill is the provision of the powers to the inspector to search and inspect consignments, including passenger luggage. Previously, such powers was only vested to Customs and Border Control officers, requiring agriculture inspectors to wait to be called to inspect if a CBC officer suspected that a consignment or a luggage or contain items regulated under the Plant Act. This provided a significant limitation to detection programs such as the deployment of agriculture detector dogs at the ports of entry. Finally, Madam Speaker, Part 7, the final section defines on how various provisions of the legislation will administrate it, provides the authority of the Cabinet to make regulations prescribing to all matters that may be required or permitted under the Act. Madam Speaker, the government and my Ministry of Agriculture are very aware of the threats to the plant health and to the need to combat these threats to ensure the efficiency and safe trade in agriculture products. As we strive to adhere to a harmonized plant health system, the Plant Protection Bill would put us several steps closer to achieving this goal. Madam Speaker, I now look for the full support of this House for this Plant Protection Bill.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to provide a short contribution to the Plant Protection Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, official opposition overall have no problems with this. We think it's, well, past timely in certain areas. Those of us who are not as much a farmer as a member from Red Bay, but backyard gardeners even understand the struggles of seeing your labor come to fruition because of the pests that we have to deal with, especially if you're trying to stay as organic as possible. So we have no problems with the bill, Madam Speaker. It's a bill. I do have a couple of observations. Perhaps the minister could provide some insight on in his wrap-up. And the first one is the declaration of a pest-free or low-pest prevalence area. That's section 28(1) of the bill. And it reads, the MPPO may declare an area to be a pest-free area in relation to a specific pest if the NPPO is satisfied that the pest is not present in this area. 2, phytosanitary measures have been implemented to keep the area free of the pest. And 3, a surveillance system has been instituted to verify that the area remains free of the pest. Or B, a low pest prevalence area in relation to a specific pest if the MPPO is satisfied that the pest is present in low levels in the area. Phytosanitary measures have been implemented to keep the pest levels low. And 3, a surveillance system has been instituted to verify that the pest levels remain low. The declaration may prohibit, restrict, or impose requirements on entry into the area by anyone or anything, and the MPPO shall inquire that an up-to-date list of pest-free areas and low pest prevalence areas is published on its website. I think that is well intended, Madam Speaker, but I find that if West Bay is declared a pest-free area, does that mean that we'll have agricultural checks set up at the entrance to West Bay to ensure that no products were brought into that area that could, or is this intended or put in, and I'm being serious here, was this intended to protect perhaps the sister islands? Should they become pest-free areas? If I know at one point the sister islands were mealy bug-free many years ago, and you couldn't bring certain plant products, hibiscus, etc., between the two islands because that area was a mealy bug. So I suspect that is what it is. I don't suspect that we'll be setting up pest-free zones and no one can bring or take vegetables from that zone to the next zone or ornamentals from that zone to the next zone. But if the minister could clarify that for me. And the second part, Madam Speaker, was the declaration of a quarantine area, section 32. And there's declarations of provisional quarantine areas, and a lot speak about the NPPO being the head and the powers that are there. But then it goes on to say that in 32 that the NPPO determines that a quarantine pest is present in an area, whether or not the area has been declared to be a provisional quarantine area. The NPPO shall advise the minister to declare the area to be a quarantine area. And 2, after receiving the advice of the NPPO, the minister shall declare the area to be a quarantine area. And then it goes on, Madam Speaker, to say what the declarations are, which are all fine. I just find it a bit odd, and perhaps someone could assist in explaining the legal jargon behind having the minister being the person declaring the place a quarantine area, and how it's written here saying that once NPPO has notified the minister, he shall make the area a quarantine area. And it is quite if you read it, the declaration of a phytosanitary emergency and the measures and the quarantine areas and the measures that are there are quite drastic. So It's just interesting the way this is written, and perhaps someone could shed some light on that for us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member, the elected member for Bordentown West?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my contribution will actually be quite short. One of the things, Madam Speaker, I want to first of all thank the Honourable Minister for bringing this bill. And one of the things, Madam Speaker, especially with budget coming around and everything else, we have a tendency in this Honourable House, every time we're putting together the budget, we have the planning estimates. And included in the planning estimates, Madam Speaker, is normally the list of all the different legislative activities that the government would seek to undertake during the budget term. And this is actually, Madam Speaker, the planning estimates from 2016, 2017, and included in it at the time, Madam Speaker, was actually change to this law. I mean, it's one of the things, one of the exercises I've always been quite tedious about, in the sense of we include these legislation as of things that we want to get done. And so to finally see a bill that has been moving from planning estimates every year, to finally making it to the House, I think that is something quite commendable for the Minister, and on behalf of the people that I represent, I want to thank him. My only observation, Madam Speaker, on this bill is in item section 17.4 that deals with import permits. And it reads, in addition, if the application is for a permit to import a live or viable specimen of an alien or genetically altered plant, the NPPO shall consult the National Conservation Council before granting a permit. Madam Speaker, I do have a concern with regards to, I'm trying to understand, Madam Speaker, and maybe the Minister can clarify on his closing, what purpose the National Conservation Council would serve in this regard. We have seen the challenges or the issues that we ever had on planning. And the last thing I want to see, Madam Speaker, is the NCC now being inserted into this process. So maybe the Minister can clarify what the purpose is in terms of what the intended, the spirit of this was included for within the law. I just want some clarification on that, Madam Speaker. And yeah, I'll just wait to see if the Minister, because then it will decide if I seek to make a committee stage amendment, but I need a little bit more clarification on that. Outside of that, Madam Speaker, I just want to again congratulate the Minister and thank him for bringing a bill that's been quite outstanding for quite some time that needs to be modernized. So with that, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover of the bill wish to exercise his right of reply?
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I just wonder, just to go back to 28.1 of the bill, where the member for Georgetown North asked a question about the declaration of pest-free of the low pest prevalence area. Madam Speaker, that section of the bill really sets out about mainly for the exports of the sister islands, of the separation from there. And also on the declaration of the quarantine area, the NPO would be set up more for the short period, to be able to deal with the short period, and then when the consulting of the Minister is actually to be able to, for long periods of areas that we can consult with Cabinet. But well, we can definitely have another conversation with that in the committee room to speak about that if we want to look at any changes on that. Okay. Madam Speaker, that is it what I have for today on this one bill. Madam Speaker, the member from Georgetown West also spoke about the one, Bordentown West. I don't know why we're getting mixed up today with him. Also spoke about the consulting with the was number 16, I think that was 17, with the National Conservation Council. Madam Speaker, it says 17.4 in addition, if the applicant is for the permit to import a live or viable specimen of alien or genetically altered plant, the NPPO shall consult with the National Conservation Council before granting the permit. Madam Speaker, I don't know whether that is 100% really necessary, but because I think most of the expertise is already with the Agriculture Department, but it's with the, one second, Madam. Madam Speaker, I understand that the alien species falls under the National Conservation Regulations. That is why that was put into that section there, ma'am. That is my contribution on this.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled Plant Protection Bill 2023 be given a second reading. All those in favor, you're that anxious? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Plant Protection Bill 2023 has been given a second reading.
Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023.
The Honourable Minister for Tourism and Ports.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill entitled the Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the mover wish to speak?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise before you today to discuss a matter of significant importance to our nation's aviation infrastructure and its economic development. Madam Speaker, the Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023 seeks to address the long-standing issue regarding terminal charges at our airports. It not only reflects my ministry's and this government's commitment to modernizing our airport infrastructure and passenger support systems, but also highlights the diligence with which we ensure the legality of fairness of our policies. The current terminal charge of $1 CI has been in effect since October 1997. Over time, Madam Speaker, as our air travel landscape has evolved, it has become evident that an adjustment is required to align the charge with the current operational needs and economic realities. The Ministry of Tourism and Ports, in collaboration with the Cayman Islands Airports Authority, has proposed an increase of $4 CI in the terminal charge, raising it to a total of $5 CI. Cabinet has approved this proposal, and in recognizing the necessity of the adequate funding to maintain and enhance our airport's facilities and services. However, Madam Speaker, during the discussions with the Attorney General's chambers, an important legal aspect came to light. It was discovered that the current terminal charge did not even exist in legislation, leading to the need to validate the payments and collections of the terminal charges dating back to October 1st of 1997. It is crucial that we rectify this situation to ensure the legality of the charges and provide a clear framework for their collection. To this end, Madam Speaker, I will explain in more detail what each of these clauses in the proposed bill seek to address. In Clause 1, Madam Speaker, provides for the short title of the bill of the legislation, namely the Terminal Charges Validation Bill. In Clause 2.1 and Clause 2.2, these clauses validate terminal charges collected during different periods under distinct regulatory framework. And more specifically, Madam Speaker, Clause 2.1 validates charges paid under earlier airports security tax regulation spanning from October the 1st, 1997 to August 16th of 2004. Madam Speaker, Clause 2.2 validates charges collected by the Cayman Islands Airports Authority from the 17th of August 2004 until the commencement of this legislation today. These validations operate as if the terminal charges have been prescribed under the relevant sections of the Civil Aviation Authorities Act 1997 revision, namely Section 27D of the Civil Aviation Authorities Act 1997 revision and Section 41(1)K of the Airports Authorities Act 2004 and 2005 revisions, respectively. Madam Speaker, Clause 3.1 and Clause 3.2, these clauses validate the penalties for non-payment to terminal charges during the same periods covered by Clause 2.1 and Clause 2.2, which, for your ease of reference, Madam Speaker, are from October the 1st, 1997 to August the 16th of 2004, and from August the 17th of 2004 until the commencement of this legislation. The validation extends to the penalties that would have been assessed and paid in accordance with regulations had those charges been properly legislated. Madam Speaker, Clause 4 ensures the validations of orders or determinations made by the courts pertaining to terminal charges before the commencement of this legislation. In essence, Madam Speaker, it serves to provide legal certainty and continuity to any past judicial orders in this context. Madam Speaker, Clause 5 aims to strike a balance between validating actions taken by the Director of Civil Aviation of the Cayman Islands Airports and the Cayman Islands Airports Authority in collection of terminal charges and the assessment of penalties, while also safeguarding against any bad faith actions. As such, it serves to indemnify those authorities, i.e., Civil Aviation and the Airports Authority, from legal challenge, except where the actions are deemed to have been taken in bad faith. As would be expected, Madam Speaker, actions pursued in bad faith would not be considered as lawful and therefore not be indemnified under this provision. In closing, Madam Speaker, the Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023 is a crucial step towards legalizing and regulating our airport's terminal charges while accommodating the ever-changing demands of our aviation landscape. This legislation ensures fairness, transparency, and accountability in our efforts to maintain and enhance our aviation infrastructure. Moreover, Madam Speaker, this bill is pivotal to our efforts to safeguard and become more competitive in our aviation sectors. By updating the terminal fees to cover essential costs, the Cayman Islands Airports Authority can continue to provide efficient services to passengers, while the Ministry and the Department of Tourism continue to work hard on maintaining our position as a competitive destination. I therefore urge all members of this Honorable House to support this bill, and I look forward to the successful passage of this important legislation. Madam Speaker, this concludes my presentation of the proposed bill, and I therefore commend this Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023 to this Honorable House for passage.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, not much to say by way of debate with regard to this proposed amendment bill that is before us. Quite clear. It was an oversight for many, many years. My count is correct, it's like 28 years almost. It's almost a lifetime. But I'm glad that the error has been identified, and we do have the legislation here to give footing to the collection of these terminal charges. Madam Speaker, the only other thing I would add is that the Minister did indicate in his presenting the bill that it looks as if the government is raising the terminal charge fees from, is it $1 per passenger? So it's going from $1 per passenger to $5 per passenger. That's what I'm, if he could indicate in his wind-up just exactly the basis upon which the fee is being charged, give us some flavor as to the amount of revenue that is actually collected. But my real point here, Madam Speaker, it represents a very sizable jump in terms of it's a 500% increase in the fees that's just being, would appear to be coming forward not too long from now in terms of the regulations that will amend the fee structure. I'm just curious as well if you might indicate if there have been any discussions with the entities or persons who actually pay these fees to the airports authority. I suspect it would be the airlines that with regard to the fees that are being charged and the ability really to absorb it as well at this point in time. So with those few comments, Madam Speaker, I do indicate our support again for the amendments, and will be voting for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover of the bill wish to exercise his right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be short, only to thank all my honorable colleagues for their tacit support in respect to the bill, and I thank the opposition for recognizing the intention to clarify this error for over a very long period of time. The honorable opposition leader spoke about an increase of 500%, Madam Speaker, and not to nitpick, but it's 400% increase. And it may sound like a lot when you say 400% increase, but it's moving only $4 extra. And I dare say, Madam Speaker, that based on my reliable information from the very capable board that manages the Airports Authority, the monies that will be collected will be going to upgrades in technology and safety as the airport has grown substantially from 1997, and the technology used in the modern day security efforts as well as aviation signaling is more costly than it was in 1997. Now, Madam Speaker, it may be perceived as a very large jump due to the fact that Cayman has not increased its fees over a long period of time, while other jurisdictions have. And as a result, when now things are justified or the authority is trying to do everything it can to modernize and stay ahead of the competitive aviation industry game, funding is necessary. The board and the head of the Airports Authority has advised that the amounts of the increase is well below standard average and still allows us to be in a competitive margin in respect to other regional airports, infrastructure, and authorities. So, Madam Speaker, with that being said, I'm happy that this bill has been able to be presented to this House so we can also clarify and safeguard the government and the authority as well as CAA as well as CIAA from any potential suits of any sort in the future, which is a very key component to this legislation being brought here today.
The question is that a bill titled Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Terminal Charges Validation Bill 2023 has been given a second reading. Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, the Parliament schedule reflects the fact that we will very likely have a very long day on Thursday and a long day on Friday to complete the business. We do intend to have Finance Committee on Friday as well. We have gotten through 3 of the 4 bills. The further bill would be the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill, which has some very technical aspects, Madam Speaker. And the desire would be to have the bill presented by the Honourable Attorney General tomorrow, as he has very specific knowledge of the detailed workings of the technical provisions. So at this point, Madam Speaker, I would move the adjournment of this Honourable House. It may be unusual for us to have such an early day, but I'd move the adjournment of this Honourable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning in order to facilitate the continuation of the presentation of that bill and other matters tomorrow morning. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The elected member for West Bay West.
Madam Speaker, I don't want to be disagreeing with the Premier, but tomorrow being Wednesday, and you have, am I understanding correctly, you're not going to be dealing with this 4th bill tomorrow? You will be dealing with it tomorrow. But Friday you have Finance Committee. Well, shouldn't, because of how we run things here, or how things have been run here, we don't want to, we have at least 5, 6, maybe more private members' motions? 9. Don't think now that we can get through all that on Thursday? I don't believe so. Then tomorrow you have this bill, don't know what kind of debate that's going to draw, and then you have all the committee stages of the other bills. I mean, maybe we should even try to get to those committee stages today, because there is still a lot of business, as much as we think not. Those discussions on those bills, on those motions, could be long, tedious, and probably putting you up till late at night Thursday to try to rush them through. And Friday, we have Finance Committee. Again, you don't know how long that will be. And I don't think you're proposing to meet, the House to meet on Friday then, except for Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, I think it's just about 3 o'clock. We started at 11, plenty of work to be done. No, I don't want to go home yet.
Madam Speaker, I understand the comments of the member from West Bay West, but I think we have ample time to get through the business of the House tomorrow. I know that there are likely to be a number of statements, and we can deal with committee stage tomorrow as well in relation to the 4 bills. I think it's what is likely to happen is today we will have a relatively light day. Tomorrow we'll see how things go, but I expect to be able to finish in a reasonable period of time tomorrow as well. But yes, Thursday is definitely going to be, because of having 9 private members' motions, we will have probably an extended period into the evening to have to deal with that. And on Friday, we will be able to deal with Finance Committee. I don't see a problem with that. We'll probably have to go into the evening a bit to deal with the complete Finance Committee as well. Obviously, it's all subject to debate, collaboration, cooperation, whatever you want to however you want to describe it. But this is normal. This should be normal business, Madam Speaker. I don't see a problem with us being able to move forward on this basis. So I would just put the motion, or ask that you put the motion to adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that this House do now adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No. And
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, divide, please.
Madam Clerk, please arrange for a division.
Honourable Wayne Panton.
No. Aye.
Honourable Juliana O'Connor Connolly.
Aye.
Honourable Kenneth Bryan.
Aye.
Honourable Sabrina Turner.
Aye.
Honourable Johanny Ebanks. Absent. Honourable Andre Ebanks.
Aye.
Honourable Bernie Bush. Absent. Miss Heather Bodden.
Aye.
Honourable Dwayne Seymour.
Aye.
Honourable Isaac Rankin.
Aye.
Honourable McKeeva Bush.
No.
Honourable Roy McTaggart.
No.
Mr. Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Mr. Moses Kirkconnell.
No.
Miss Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Honourable Sir Alden McLaughlin.
No.
Mr. David White,
No.
Mr. Christopher Saunders,
No.
I have 10 ayes, 6 noes, and 2 absentees. The ayes have it. This honorable house do now stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.